Okay, now we're sitting here with Mr. Alejandro Rojas of Open Minds fame. Also, back in the day, he was on UFO Think Tank, which was the show that got me started into this whole phenomenon that is ufology. And I want to thank you for that. I've talked to you on air before and talked to you about this and thanked you on air. But here we have you on video. And, it's always an honor to have you on the show with us.
First of all, I'm always very flattered when you tell me about, being influenced by the show. So that's always awesome to hear. So it's cool. That's, why you do this stuff, to help get people into it. And it's awesome to be able to inspire people like that. But actually, I had very little to do with putting this on. It's actually Morgan Bell and Florida Mufon who did a lot of it, and then the Mufon International. We do help with consulting and things like that, and I love Morgan. Morgan's a friend. I had him on my show, and then, we've been promoting the event quite a bit. But, yeah, they're awesome. They did a great job, and I think they had a great lineup. Personally, and sans me, I don't mean to say that the lineup was so great because I was on it, but even if I wasn't on it, I think they did one of the best lineups for MUFON in a while, personally, for the symposium. So it's been a lot of fun. It's my first time in Florida, too, which is cool. And this is what's crazy for the audience. So, you were talking about UFO Think Tank. That was years ago. I think we were talking about 8 or 9 years ago or something. And this is the first time we've met face-to-face, which is so funny, even though I met Seth face-to-face before. So, pretty awesome.
I saw your lecture earlier, your talk, and it was amazing. Tell the audience a little bit about what you brought to the 2016 symposium this year and what you talked about in your speech. Because I sat in and I'm telling you, I was glued to everything you were saying. It was, very captivating, to hear the history of, the way the governments have handled this topic over the years. Is just, to me, it's sometimes scary, sometimes laughable, but most of the time is very interesting because, they all kind of have like a different angle, different take. Some take it a little bit more serious than others. And, over the years, with your topics that you've handled on your own shows, how have you come up with such a grounded, amount of material to talk about, and especially with what you did here, and talk a little bit about what you actually presented here for MUFON this year.
It's funny that you say that because I was thinking about it, and when I was able to approach, putting together talks, it's kind of like we get to be kind of like the Netflix of ufology, because Netflix, when they started producing, they looked at what is out there that they're streaming, and they looked at what are the gaps, what is the type of thing that people like to hear about, and then they started producing shows using that sort of metrics. And we're able to do that too, since we put out, we do the UFO Congress, the largest conference. We get to see what people like, and since I've got so much information coming across my desk every day, I'm able to see what are people not talking about that are important, and where there's a lot of great information. So this is one of them. I think the international organizations, UFO organizations, because there are UFO organizations that are backed by their governments, often when we bring these people from these other countries that are involved, like General Bermudez, who is the head of the group in Chile, CEPA, they come and they talk. We've brought people over from France, but they talk about their procedures and policies, and you kind of don't get from their talks what you really want is, why are you guys doing this? How does your government allow you to do this? And so that's the kind of stuff I compiled for this talk. Cases like in like Oscar Zamoya or something like that, and he was in I think Peru. I get them all jumbled up in my head, but this is a case, for instance, where the military goes out in the morning every day. They get their orders. They do these parade kind of thing. It's a formal thing. So you have thousands of these military guys, and over one of these bases, this UFO appears. And they scramble a jet to chase it. The pilot shoots at it. He says it felt like the bullets were just being absorbed by this thing. And then it flies away. He lands. It comes back, sort of thing. And this was witnessed by all of these people. In fact, their organization is ran by a gentleman who was there, who saw all of this happen. It's a famous case, though. The Americans even investigated it. So, especially some of these South American countries are kind of like examples of this is the way it should be done. This is the way it should be open. They should be working with civilian organizations like they do. And it makes a lot of sense. It's like, this is obviously the way you should do it. I think when it comes into the laughable parts are some of the aspects of when the Americans did it, or when Canada did it, or when the UK did it, which I overview at the beginning of the talk, even though I focus on the existing agencies that exist right now, because, they all kind of just explain it away, and it's more of a PR issue to close it. And when you look at the details, such as, the Condon report is very similar to the UK government when they closed their UFO desk, which is only in 2009. They first released a lot of cases and their files, and they say, look, there's the cases, there's the files, there's nothing to them, so we're closing the doors. And lots of people are happy with that. But when you actually look at those cases and you look at those files, they're fascinating. They are, very many multiple witness cases with military, very many cases of objects being chased by jets. They race away, they outpace the jets, and then they're gone, that we can't explain. And so obviously, the cases don't really reflect what they're trying to tell us they reflect. What's interesting about that as well, and why one of the reasons it's important to review that, is France. They started their UFO research organization in the 70s. It was started by a guy who worked for CNES, which is like their NASA, and they were receiving the UFO files from the gendarmes, the National Police Force, and he analyzed those. But he was influenced by the Condon report, because he thought, well, I'm gonna read this report and see what they came up with, because they're saying this report justified them closing their UFO investigations. However, when he looked at the report, he found the opposite was true, that the report really indicates that there is a phenomena that should be paid attention to, and that's what inspired him to investigate UFOs and the French files. And that's what inspired the whole JPON, the French UFO research organization that still exists today, to be started. So, yeah, I think it's all fascinating stuff. The cases are fascinating. The French case that had kind of inspired the original UFO research was back in the 60s, and this was a case where this large thing, a couple objects flew over Tenerife is the name of is what the French call it, the capital of Madagascar. They estimate 200,000 people saw this. A lot of people, tourists and shoppers that are out in the town and out and about because it's a big tourism place. So 200,000 people saw this thing flying around, and it was never explained. So, yeah, just fascinating and incredible cases.
Okay, now here's the interesting question for the day for this show. With all the speaking engagements that you do, and with all the information that gets put in front of you, is there anything in particular of all the incidents that you hear about, or that you also already talk about, that has happened during 2016 that really stands out to you as a empirical proof, or something you just can't deny, or something that just really comes to the forefront of all the incidents that are being reported this year?
It's a great question, and it's important. I actually often ask myself that question when I'm thinking about the radio show or stories to write, because especially the media, mainstream media, like to hear about here and now, what's happening here and now. So it's important to think of that kind of thing. And to answer that question, that's what's interesting, is that it becomes difficult, because we do have, we're posting, luckily we have a great relationship with Mufon, and we're pretty much the only people that have exclusive access to a lot of their files and everything, and that's via Roger Marsh, who is the director of communications for Mufon, and he writes for us. So he writes stories about sightings and sighting reports, and even their results. And so there are some interesting videos, but, lately there aren't as that I can think of as great or solid of cases. I think one of the difficulties with this sort of thing is that, especially when it comes to the military, our military, they don't disclose any of that sort of thing. And what's funny about that, people ask me, we even talked about it earlier, I'm not necessarily on the conspiratorial end, but it depends on how you're defining conspiracies. And really, the military does work via secrets and lies. I mean, they're extremely secretive. But so is our society. You look at marketing, look at, any cola or any product. Whenever they're selling to us, they're telling us their products do things that they don't. They're better than everybody else. They're lying to us. And they're secretive about, the results that are negative about their products. Where people are like that. So it's like it's okay to have these secrets and to lie. And the government works that way as well. I mean, so we never find out what's going on. And they're highly, highly secretive. So we don't find out about the good cases going on anymore. And they don't share that sort of things with us. So we do have civilians with interesting things. And we do have some interesting videos out there. But nothing, I don't think, that's really, that I've seen this year that I can think of now that's jaw-dropping or confirming something.
Would you say it's getting harder and harder also to take into credibility a lot of the videos that are posted because of the way CGI is, the way how easy it is for somebody in their basement to create a really authentic looking alien, as we've seen on YouTube several times now, or videos of ships flying around? It's just become so much more easier these days. So it's a lot harder to actually take something like that you see on YouTube, for example, and see it as a credible thing.
I'll name names of sites, and people always get really upset with me when I do this, and you'll probably get some feedback when I do this now. But the problem is, you're right, it's easy, and there's people who have hobbies doing it because you can make money at it. There's Secure Team 10. And I'm sorry, guys, Secure Team 10, at first he was very open about how these are just videos for fun. They're not real. He even said that at one point, but then he took that video down. No, this is Secure Team 10. Ever since the get-go, they were more along the lines of, that they are creating these for entertainment. But now they've noticed that people believe them and they begin watching them. And really, it's hard to necessarily, it's not cool because it does put out stuff that's not real. And it's become a real issue right now because tabloids, like UK tabloids, are picking them up and they're running with the stories. And then sometimes those even get picked up by American media, even though they don't do their research to find out that this guy's a hoaxer. But he's running with it. He's making money through YouTube and everything. You mentioned third phase of Moon, but you're right. They're the same. Now, they've never admitted that they're hoaxing stuff. Yeah, but you can tell it's CGI. You can tell it's hoaxed. However, you'll probably get some feedback because there's a lot of people that believe it. And they're like, well, how do you know? What if this was really sent in and this one's real, even though that other one's fake? But I'm sorry, and even in that instance, if they're being sent something extraordinary that's real, they've hoaxed so many times you can't know and you can't trust them, so they've just destroyed that evidence if it is the case. Whereas, if you look at Mufon, who has been collecting this stuff for decades, first of all, they're more likely to get that video, but at least there's some precedence there of some honesty. So it's really difficult right now because of that. Not only that, drones are becoming more and more popular. Chinese lanterns are becoming more and more. Yeah, you've got a drone right here. If you flew that around last night, you might have generated some MUFON reports and videos. So, I mean, it's really, really getting difficult with pictures and videos at this point. And you can have the anecdotal information to come along with it, which makes it more interesting. But it doesn't make it necessarily definitive evidence. And so it does become more and more difficult. The bar gets higher and higher on proving something in this field, I think.
With the proliferation of video cameras on your cell phones out there, I'm just wondering, has anybody really dedicated their time to the analysis, and what percentage of the reports that are now showing up are from these video cameras that are on your phones? The resolution is supposed to be phenomenal at this point.
Resolution when it comes to your cell phone is better than ever. However, the zooming capabilities, and whenever you do zoom in, it's a software zoom, so the resolution goes down. And people are like, well, we have cameras all the time. Well, go outside and use your phone to videotape a jet. And you'll find it's very difficult to tell what the heck that is. You see just this point. Even in the day, you just see, a commercial airliner. You just see this tiny little dot way up in the sky. Even if you zoom in, then the resolution becomes poor, and it's difficult to tell what it is. That's even during the day, which is a little better. But then go try to do that at the night. All you have are these indiscriminate lights in the sky. Yeah, orbs. So until we get zoom lenses on our cell phones or something. So yeah, it's still difficult, even though you're right, more and more videos are on the phones. Almost exclusively videos and photos seem to be cell phone videos and photos these days. So, but it's still not helping yet. There is a project out there that's really cool that I think people should really pay attention to. And what's a little frustrating is that there's a lot of new projects that are being generated by scientists and stuff like that, and they're trying to reduplicate it, but it's already kind of out there. There's a guy in the UK, a software developer, who developed a software called UFO Detector. And you can go download this for free. It's open source, and it turns your computer into a UFO detector. So you just point your camera. It's actually independent to some dude in the UK. Oh, similar to SETI or something. But what you do is you put your camera out your window, and then this thing is like a motion detector. It'll record the video when something's moving in front of it, and it's smart enough to learn. So it will be able to self-recognize that's a plane, that's a bird, so it can identify things for you. So it's a really cool software, and it's funny because I was sitting in a meeting with some of these organizations, like you've probably heard of UFO Data or UFOTOG, these guys who are trying to do that sort of thing. And they're like, well, we're trying to develop software. And it's like, well, it's already out there, guys. But I really encourage anybody to go do that because they've captured really cool videos of like meteorites and things like that already. And they have gotten at least 2 or 3 videos that are a little bit mysterious. So that's something that people can do right now. All of your listeners, any listener can go download that UFO Detector. Just Google that and you'll find it.
Well, let's expand upon that a little bit. For the Skywatchers out there, is there anything else that you, like a certain camera or a video camera that's really good to kind of help record UFOs? And mostly for the Skywatchers, because I know a lot of times, well, yeah, any that's cost effective, or maybe that's not, because you never know with these Skywatchers.
I mean, some of these folks have money to burn and they don't mind doing it. Like our friend Bill the Skywatcher, who does live Skywatches every weekend. And we did one a couple nights ago while here in Orlando, and we captured several objects. It's live on YouTube where he does it, and I mean, he does this on a weekly basis, and he usually captures really authentic-looking things in the skies. So, I mean, people do have the resources sometimes.
Well, no, I was just going to say, when it comes to the cost-effective, you want it to be cost-effective because, like a trail camera for trying to catch your Sasquatch or your Bat Squatch, you haven't heard the Bat Squatch story, but you'll get to. We'll tell you in a little bit. But you want to make sure people don't walk off with your camera.
Well, yeah, cost effective is a big one actually, because not everybody has the money to spend a couple $1,000s for a piece of equipment. Not only that, not everybody has like a spouse or significant other who's going to allow you or be happy about you spending that amount of money. It's funny because the spousal issue is always an issue, especially with attending a conference. Often people are like, "Oh, I'd love to, but my wife won't let me," or vice versa. It's sort of a funny thing. So, yeah, as far as a cost-effective, the UFO detector is free, so that's awesome. Other than that, unfortunately, I think infrared is great. Night vision is really cool, but they are really expensive. There's one that's not too expensive. I think it's around $900. I can't remember what it's called. It's like a Nighthawk or something. However, we have a couple stories. This is what's funny. We have a couple stories of sightings that have been caught with that. One of them is in Tucson. Unfortunately, Tucson Mufon debunked that one. He was able to go down there and reproduce everything and figure out what it was. However, there's a guy in Toronto, Charles Lamoureux, and he has a bunch of equipment that he uses, and he uses one of these cameras. It's not true night vision, and it's color, but it is like it's a night collecting video, so it's really good for recording at night. That's a really cool camera. But what's so funny about it is when you go to the manufacturer's website for this camera, they've embedded like some of our Open Mind stories and videos in the story to say, hey, use this to go capture UFOs. So that's a really good one. But what else is good is daytime. I mean, right now you can get some high resolution cameras that have great zoom. Definitely recommend people to use optical zoom and not the software zoom, because when you use the software zoom, it uses software to zoom in, and it changes the resolution. It dilutes the picture. It changes the picture, because essentially your camera is just guessing where the pixel should go and what the pixel should be like. So it's distorting the view. So, but there are some really high optical zoom cameras out there that aren't very expensive. And unfortunately though, it takes sitting outside with your camera for a long, long time. So, the people who get the best stuff are just people who are outside doing this for a long time. And, but I don't know, the best bet right now, I think, is nighttime with the night vision. I think some of those are really, really cool. And a good place to go for that, to plug my buddy Ben Hansen, he has a night optics, night vision store. And he's got a lot of stuff there, including things you can attach to your cell phone to videotape. Unfortunately, still, even if you're attaching it to your cell phone, they're not cheap.
In fact, just to touch upon how long you have to be out there sometimes, Bill spends about 8-9 hours outside doing the Skywatches. And we did one a few weeks ago, which was the first one I had done with him on YouTube. And it inspired me to get back into skywatching. And I'm going to be eventually getting myself some equipment to start doing it myself. Mind you, I am single at the moment. And this might make me single for a very long time. I don't know what woman will want to stick around with a guy who's outside watching the skies all night. So that's an unfortunate drawback in this field. But Crystal, you're laughing. and Alan over here is probably laughing also, yeah? Yes. Yeah, but see, you have a lady.
You have a spouse who cannot support your hobbies. You need a new spouse. Period. End of discussion.
Very well said. Very well said. Now, Alejandro, here at the Symposium and in Ufology, we deal with a lot of folks that have books available. When are you going to write a book and put it out for the masses? I mean, you've had a lot of experience in this field. You've done a lot of research. You're very well versed with Mufon, Open Minds, of course, which is a great organization. When are we going to get an Alejandro Rojas book?
It's funny you should ask, but and the reason is it's not because I have one out or coming out that soon. Yeah, it's that the talk I did today, I've been developing a book on. So what's great is that the symposium, the Mufon Symposium, one thing that they do is that you're supposed to write a paper for the symposium proceedings, which is really cool because a lot of these papers are great. So I spend a lot of time detailing everything that, and you get more detail in the symposium proceedings than I was able to present, and you get all my references, and that can be difficult because what's great, I write on a regular basis, and writing a smaller piece, I'm always using references because I want to make sure, check myself, and I want to reference credible sources, and that's what becomes difficult in this field because often you follow a story to the source and you find the source is either crap or it's not as substantial or credible as you think. But like what I talked about all today is from governments or personal interviews from my colleague Antonio Huneas, who also wrote for Open Minds. So luckily I wrote that out, and that kind of serves as an outline for the book. And I've been working on putting it together for a long time. It's just that I'm focused on daily news and putting out news on a daily basis, so it becomes hard to focus on something like that. But I'm starting to have some more time to focus on that, and I want to get that out there because I think it's important. It's kind of following on the heels of Leslie Kane a bit, because some of this is she had some of these people in her book, and her book was so important and influential to the mainstream scientists who have come out and talked about in support of her book, and the credible research and people who have talked about it. So so that's probably going to be my first book. I am working on it. I've already had some contact with a publisher, a bigger publisher, So I'll probably go that route. I've also researched self-publishing and micro-publishing, but my point is not necessarily to make the most money off of this book. I want it to go out to the most people possible. And so hopefully the Alejandro Rojas book will be out soon.
I want a signed copy. That's all I'm saying. Now, for folks who are interested in getting involved with Open Minds and with Mufon, start with Open Minds. How would they go about involving themselves with Open Minds?
Yeah, luckily, I think part of why we're out there so much is that we make it we're very accessible to people. I mean, we provide a lot of information for free, and I don't know that any other organization provides so much information for free. All of our stories that we write on a daily basis are free at openminds.tv. We make videos about UFO cases, UFO photos, UFO news on a weekly basis on our YouTube channel. That's all free. So you've got access to a lot of stuff. We do have contributors also on our website, and I love to get contributors. Now we try to stick to a high level of journalistic integrity. So we just don't want opinion pieces. We want pieces that are well researched, or no fluff, and we want it to be fair. It's unbiased, and you've got to present both sides. So, for instance, I'll even... Yeah, we can't provide the alien's point of view. Here's an example, though. Here's an example, and this is a bit controversial. And I'm going to go there, but what the hell? Larry Warren, because this is one that I've seen lately. People writing on Larry Warren. Well, there's good there, and there's bad. This is one of the Rendlesham witnesses. And there are less flattering issues related to Mr. Warren out there. But to write a piece, and this is why I haven't written one, because I don't like to really out people necessarily. But people have been writing about him lately, but they've been forgetting or leaving out, the whole story. And that's not fair, I don't think. That's bias, and that's not... if we were to write about that, I would ask that someone, be unbiased. And you got to write the good and the bad. You got to give people the full story. We don't like to give people their opinions. We like to share the information in the most pure and honest way and let people come up with their own opinions. That's what journalism is supposed to be. Of course, mainstream journalism, unfortunately, has moved away from that. But we stick to that. So we do ask that. And some people have problems kind of sticking to that. Others don't, which is great. So we've got a lot of great stuff out there. Paul Stonehill writes for us almost. I don't know that he writes for anybody else, and he'll be speaking at our next conference, but he's an expert on Russian UFO cases. So that's pretty cool. And we've got some other great ones. So we love to get people's stuff in there. We have posted opinion pieces rarely, but they're usually someone that's very significant, someone who's been in the field for a long time who has an opinion piece that's important for the field. So we have broken that rule, but that's why. But we get opinion pieces from people all the time, and it's like, we're sorry, I love that you have an opinion, but put it on your blog. That's not necessarily what we do. But we do love, input from people, and we often write about videos and sightings from people too, so that are really cool that people send to us. So we love that sort of thing, but openminds.tv is where you can get to all of this. We have links there to the UFO Congress, which is the largest UFO conference. We host that in February, and you can go to ufocongress.com. We've got half the speakers listed for our upcoming one. We'll have the other half listed in the next couple of weeks. We are kind of waiting for this event because we're making some connections and talking with some people. So we've got, I think, a great lineup as usual coming up here. And we do have the only paid thing besides the Congress that we have is we have a new video portal where we're streaming all of the previous lectures that since we've owned the UFO Congress. So for like the last 5 or 6 years, we stream online the lectures. So it's very cheap. It's a few bucks a month. You can have access to dozens and dozens and dozens of great lectures, including lectures you're never going to see anywhere else. Jacques Vallée, he doesn't do public appearances, but he did for the Congress last year. Bob Lazar, he doesn't do public appearances, but he did for us a couple years ago. And other lectures you're just not going to see anywhere else.
And how long have you been involved with Open Minds itself?
With Open Minds, we started up at about 2009, so I've been there since the get-go. I wasn't there at the beginning of the development, but I came in before we kind of launched and managed pretty much the launch of Open Minds. So yeah, so we've been around since 2009, and I've been with Mufon a lot longer than that, since around 2001. I began helping out in Colorado and a field investigator out there. Luckily, headquarters was in Colorado, so then I started getting involved with Mufon International way back then.
Yeah, it was a great presentation. I really thought it was. I don't think a lot of people know how many other, government organizations are out there in different countries that are actually, taking this seriously. And it actually wasn't surprising to me that it seemed like Chile was taking it seriously most of all out of everybody. But no, it's fascinating to hear about that. So I'm looking forward to your book as well.
We all are. It's funny because we talked to a gentleman from South Korea yesterday, and he was saying that the interest level there is completely like none, which is amazing to me that they have no interest whatsoever in the subject. To them, they don't even look at it as anything serious or credible, or they don't even talk about it. Do you think that there are other countries like that as well?
There are definitely other countries out there like that, and one I can think of is Germany, but yeah, so there are countries that just don't really believe in it at all, or focus on it, and it's not a thing. And interesting enough, I did leave out a couple countries that I will put in the book, but I left out China and Russia, mainly because Paul Stonehill's the pro in Russia. We don't have as much access to information from those countries either. It's a little more difficult. But we've interviewed some people from China, and there's some really interesting things that they've done there. And I'll have to get with Paul on the Russia chapter. But yeah, there are unfortunately a lot of countries out there that just don't want nothing to do with it.
That's surprising that Germany is not as well, considering the Nazi Bell and the Hannibal Project and all the stuff that happened back then.
Last question, because we brought up South Korea. The gentleman that we were talking to posited basically that because there are no reports coming out of South Korea about UFOs, is this really a phenomenon? What about all the countries that there are no UFOs at all? Nobody's seen them. So your opinion, just curious, is it because they're not there, or is it because people just simply aren't seeing them? What do you think?
That's a great question, and I think MUFON's a good meter for that because they're the largest UFO organization out there taking reports. And, they're opening up in more and more countries. I think someone even noted the other day that, they were talking to their chapter in Sweden, and they were like, how many people can do you have? How many people can help out with this project? And he's like, me. He's not only the director, he's the one member of the group. So, but whenever you put someone in a country or whenever they have a volunteer there, then the sightings start coming in. Whenever MUFON has a bigger presence in an area, then there's more reports. So it often seems that, and when I was doing PR for MUFON, it really seemed more like whenever we got more attention, there were more reports. So it's an instance of there aren't more sightings necessarily. It's that more people are becoming aware of that they can report to someone, that there is someone to report to. So I don't see any region where there aren't reports, personally. I think it's just the people just don't have someone to report to, or culturally, for some reason, it's just not something they do. They don't report that sort of thing. And what's funny is, on the one side, there's the countries that don't believe in the stuff as much, and so they don't report as much. But there's also the opposite, because there are countries that feel just very passé. They're like, it's something that happens all the time. Why should we report it? It's just, we all know they're there. What's the big deal? And so they don't report because it's just, a regular part of life. We don't report when we see a red car go down the street, red car report. So, yeah, that's how they feel.
Alejandro, thank you so much for taking part of the interview here with us at Skywatchers Radio. Thank you for finally, being face-to-face and meeting you. It's been an honor and a pleasure for myself. Like I said earlier, you're the person that got me started and inspired into doing this stuff. And once again, I want to shake your hand, sir. Thank you so much for being here with us. It's been a pleasure. Okay, now we're sitting here with Mr. Alejandro Rojas of Open Minds fame. Also, back in the day, he was on UFO Think Tank, which was the show that got me started into this whole phenomenon that is ufology. And I want to thank you for that. I've talked to you on air before and talked to you about this and thanked you on air, but here we have you on video. And, it's always an honor to have you on the show with us.
First of all, I'm always very flattered when you tell me about, being influenced by the show.
I kind of have like a different angle, different take. Some take it a little bit more serious than others. And, over the years, with your topics that you've handled on your own shows, how have you come up with such a grounded, amount of material to talk about, especially with what you did here? And talk a little bit about what you actually presented here for Mufon this year.
It's funny that you say that because I was thinking about it, and when I was able to approach, putting together talks, it's kind of like we get to be kind of like the Netflix of ufology, because Netflix, when they started producing, they looked at what is out there that they're streaming, and they looked at what are the gaps, what is the type of thing that people like to hear about, and then they started producing shows using that sort of metrics. And we're able to do that too, since we put out, we do the UFO Congress, the largest conference. We get to see what people like, and since I've got so much information coming across my desk every day, I'm able to see what are people not talking about that are important, and where there's a lot of great information. So this is one of them. I think the international organizations, UFO organizations, because there are UFO organizations that are backed by their governments, often when we bring these people from these other countries that are involved, like General Bermudez, who is the head of the group in Chile, CEPA, they come and they talk. We've brought people over from France, but they talk about their procedures and policies, and you kind of don't get from their talks what you really want is, why are you guys doing this? How does your government? So that's always awesome to hear. So it's cool. That's, why you do this stuff, to help get people into it, and it's awesome to be able to inspire people like that. But actually, I had very little to do with putting this on. It's actually Morgan Bell and Florida Mufon who did a lot of it, and then the Mufon International. We do help with consulting and things like that, and I love Morgan. Morgan's a friend. I had him on my show, and then, we've been promoting the event quite a bit, but yeah, they're awesome. They did a great job, and I think they had a great lineup. Personally, and sans me, I don't mean to say that the lineup was so great because I was on it, but even if I wasn't on it, I think they did one of the best lineups for MUFON in a while, personally, for the symposium. So it's been a lot of fun. It's my first time in Florida, too, which is cool. And this is what's crazy for the audience. So, you were talking about UFO Think Tank. That was years ago. I think we were talking about 8 or 9 years ago or something. And this is the first time we've met face-to-face, which is so funny, even though I met Seth face-to-face before. So pretty awesome.
I saw your lecture earlier, your talk, and it was amazing. Tell the audience a little bit about what you brought to the 2016 symposium this year and what you talked about in your speech. Because I sat in, and I'm telling you, I was glued to everything you were saying. It was, very captivating, to hear the history of, the way the governments have handled this topic over the years. It's just, to me, it's sometimes scary, sometimes laughable, but most of the time is very interesting because, they